I love coincidences. Today's guest, Stefan, is an expert in the world of telekinesis and telepathy, subjects I know little about. Yet, by the end of the interview, we found each other in the same place about the advancement of human evolution. It's about connecting with each other and the divine. It's about remembering the gifts that are already placed within us. You are in for a treat. The first part of our interview, we talk extensively about telekinesis and how it's taught to great effect. The last part, we talk about telepathy and how that may be the key to awakening our consciousness. Here's his bio. Stefan, an international trainer and researcher of human potential whose work explores the intersection of consciousness, psychology, and extraordinary human abilities. Originally known for leading telekinesis trainings around the world, his focus has increasingly shifted toward telepathy, which he sees as the next frontier of human connection and communication. Drawing on extensive training in hypnosis, human behavior, and transformational education, Alex combines psychological insight with immersive experiences designed to help people discover what they are capable of for themselves. His mission is to challenge limiting assumptions, expand human potential, and support a growing movement toward deeper connection, greater awareness, and a more conscious future. Here's our interview with Stefan. Hi, Alex. Really nice to have you here on the Afterlife Files. Welcome.
Thanks. Thank you. Yeah, likewise. Very happy to be here. Thank you very much for the invitation.
I am excited because this is a field that I don't know a lot about. So I think it'd be helpful not only for me, but for those who are watching. Tell us a little bit about your story.
Yeah. So my story with psychic abilities and even with telekinesis, it started quite early. Um, I was lucky enough that my parents are Romanian and they moved to Canada when I was very young, around the age of 2. And if you, some of you and some of your audience might be aware that in the former communist bloc, Russia, Romania, and other former communist countries, they were very exposed to things like psychic abilities and ESP, remote viewing. That's how, at least, the story's told in the West, that America kind of started putting money into their own programs with remote viewing when they heard that the Russians were doing these kinds of things. So very, very early on, I was exposed to this kind of stuff from my parents. In Toronto, where I grew up, my parents on the weekends, they'd go to garage sales. And at these garage sales, they'd be buying books because they love books. And, they grew up in this kind of, in a society where books were really valued. And in fact, I'm here visiting my parents in Romania, in Transylvania, and this is their bookshelf. There's a lot more if I showed you. Um, And when I was really young, they'd go to garage sales and they'd be picking up books for, 5 cents, 10 cents each. And they'd be coming back with these very topics, among which were also these books on ESP, extrasensory perception, and telepathy, and remote viewing, near-death experiences, out-of-body experiences, all of these, astral projection. So early on, around the age of 5, 6, 7, because also Romanian culture is much more open to, it's quite open to spirituality and mysticism. It's a very religious culture, but it's also much more about the spiritual and the mystical side and the superstitious side as well. So I came across these kinds of books and I started reading these books at, you know, 5, 6, 7, and as I was growing up, because I always had just an innate curiosity about them. And even early on, I was practicing these telepathy exercises with my mother and my father with Zener cards. Zener cards are these five symbols. Yeah, you might be familiar: a circle, a square, a star, waves, and a cross or a plus. So this was kind of my upbringing, and I was also lucky enough to for them to have bought this Silva Ultramind CD course or training. If you might be familiar with that, Jose
I
Silva.
I am. It's the beginning path for a lot of folks I know.
Yeah, yeah, and it was. I listened to these audios. They're supposed to take you in a lower brainwave state, going down into alpha. Alpha was a really big one for Jose Silva. And while you were there to do healing, to do remote viewing, to do telepathic exercises, and I did very well with those. And then again, my parents were, I don't know, I was fortunate enough and blessed enough that they sent me to one of these workshops at a very, very young age. Again, something like 9, 10, 11. And it was a weekend workshop. And that's when I had a chance to actually practice with strangers, with adults, and really develop these abilities further. And that's kind of what started my curiosity and interest in psychic abilities, but also things like magical systems, Hermeticism, Western magical systems, Eastern alchemy as well. So I spent a lot of time learning about these. I did Reiki when I was quite young, and telekinesis specifically, I watched a video when I was about 16. Um, I was in grade 11 at the time, so I wasn't graduating yet. I was either grade 10 or grade 11. And I watched this video of um, this guy who had a psi wheel. And for those that aren't familiar with the psi wheel, it's a simple practice device to practice telekinesis. It's basically you take a needle and you stick a needle into like an eraser or something that is able to stand upright so that it's perpendicular
Okay.
to the
To the
table.
table, yeah.
Yeah. And then you place an aluminum foil on top and you fold it in such a way so that it's just balancing on the needle. And you might fold it in half and it's just there. And the principle is that because the foil is so light, aluminum foil is very, very light, it takes very little to move it. And because it's sitting on the point of a needle, on the sharp point of a needle, again, it can spin. It can spin very, very easily. And this guy, he was a younger guy, he had it underneath a glass bowl. And he had it there, he had it in front of him, and I could see he would be sitting in lotus position, and he would kind of clench his fists a bit, and I saw this psi wheel move under glass jar.
And the
And he did
glass
this,
jar
and I
was
could
there to keep the wind or
exactly.
way. Yeah,
Exactly, yeah, because it is very susceptible to anything, including wind, including, air currents and
your
your even
breath.
your breathing.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. This was he was proving that, it wasn't one of these things. Now, of course, this can easily be faked with magnets or with other things. So it's not, I wasn't at a, I was already, my mind was already open to these things. So I wasn't questioning whether or not it was real. But it really inspired me to then try it myself. So I made one and within fairly quickly, within a few minutes, maybe within 5 minutes, and the thing with aluminum foil is when you're watching it, if you have like a light source, the light is reflecting. So you can see the tiniest movements that are happening. And I remember as I was watching, it was just the smallest movement, and this was, this huge moment for me um, at 16. That okay, wow, this is a superpower, and this is happening. Um, and I remember at the time, this was a much bigger deal than the healing or the Reiki that I've done. It was a much bigger deal to me than the telepathy or the remote viewing because I had a lot of successes with these. But this just felt so much more real because I was influencing matter. I was influencing reality. Um, Anyway, I progress with it. I spend weeks, I spend a few months with it, and then unfortunately some things happen, and I go into this story much more deeply in my training because it's part of my training, and there's a big principle, it's a big lesson in it. But the short of it is, unfortunately, I told my friend, and he laughed it off, and I got embarrassed in school, and then I regressed a lot, and then that happened a couple of times, and then I just stopped. And I ended up going to university for business. I studied finance, so I really took on a very materialist worldview. Um, and that sort of stopped at the time anyway, my journey with these kinds of things. Until fast forward about 10 years later, um, after I had done graduate studies and I became even more of a numbers guy. I worked in finance, I worked in consulting, and I was like, there has to be something more to life than this. And by then, I kind of forgot all of the magic that I had as a kid and as a teenager. And I I had this phone call, this 3 hour phone call with a good friend of mine, who completely changed my life. I did a 180. I went from doing business and being very entrepreneurial at the time, starting businesses to, okay, I want to study the mind. And that's when I got back into hypnosis, because I had studied hypnosis as a teenager. And did an apprenticeship with one of the UK's top hypnotherapists, James Tripp. Um, unbelievable guy. And he really opened up my mind to the power of ritual and ceremony. And that
Mm.
got me then onto looking into shamanism. And I did a number of trainings shamanic trainings in Scotland, up north. And I was searching for what made witch doctors or medicine men and women, what allowed them to heal people, because I thought it was the power of the mind. Because I knew it was the same with hypnotherapy and hypnosis. And instead I found the magic that I had lost when I was a kid.
Oh.
And that got me back into getting into magic. It got me back I started doing telekinesis again. And I was living in the UK at the time. I then moved my life to Australia to do an apprenticeship with my current mentor, um, for training, to learn how to train and how to develop people and how to coach people by working with people's belief systems, working with people's um, with their unconscious mind, and applying how can you best help and develop people. And that's when I really got back into telekinesis, and I was like, hold on, I wonder if I can use the stuff that I know now, because I did a lot of change work. I worked with a lot of clients. I wonder if I can apply the same stuff that I would use in developmental coaching to be able to apply to train skills or train these abilities, what I thought were abilities, these psychic abilities. And I tried it on myself, and I learned it much more quickly than I did when I was a kid, which is which is a big deal because when you're a kid, you have very little conditioning about the 3D world. You
Yep.
know,
Yep.
magic is real, these things are possible, and then as an adult, you kind of put those things away, and then you start to think, life is predictable. So the fact that I learned it more quickly was a huge success. And then I ran a training. I said, okay, let's see if I can train other people. And I ran a 5 day training, and by the fifth day, people were rolling cans. They're able to roll cans, and that was the first training I ran with 6 people. And that at the time was unheard of in the telekinesis community. You don't, yeah, yeah, Scott.
So, you said you're able to teach more quickly. I want to be sure that I understand this. So, it was through the use of hypnosis and ritual and something else.
Yeah, so at the time I thought that these were skills. because they're kind of that's how they're kind of framed to people, right? They're psychic skills. It's remote viewing. You get better through practice. My current belief is that they're not skills. They're inherent in all of us. We all have them, and they're
Oh,
very easy to pick up. And I've had lots and lots of experiences from my students and people that I've trained where they're able very quickly to jump up, or they're able to do some things that they should not be able to do at the level that they're at in quotations level.
yep.
So yeah, hypnosis, trance, working with belief systems, with frames. Um,
Frames are
so frames. So for example, if I call something a psychic skill, there's a frame around that it's a skill. And immediately when you go to do it, you have the expectation, like it might be anything like like playing basketball. You're not going to be good at the beginning, and it takes practice to get better.
right. So there's a whole history around you, how you would acquire a skill. That would be a frame, and we're just going to lose those.
Exactly, exactly. So I was very careful with that first training, what sort of frames I set up.
Hmm.
And I was applying basically all of the things that I've learned from my mentor to help people develop in other skills or learn other things. I was applying them in the psychic, in the telekinesis kind of field. And yeah, I got lucky the first time around. I framed things quite well. Um, People did extremely well. And I didn't think I'd be doing a second training because that first training was more so I could give myself a context to do a training so I could learn how to train better so that because I hadn't done a training until that point. But people really loved it. And then word got out, and then people asked me to do a second one, new people. So I did a second one, and I did a third one, and a fourth one, and then that just kept happening. And I did a bunch in Australia, and then I've done another, I don't know how many in the States now as well, and in Canada. Um, so yeah, it just kind of spiraled out of control almost because I've been on the road and traveling the last year nonstop.
Well, this sounds really fascinating. So, how do your trainings look in telekinesis? Let's go there first. How do they look different than other trainings that you've attended?
Well, to start, I haven't attended other trainings in person on telekinesis. Um,
No,
I
well,
don't know.
you went to trainings in finance and HR, and I mean, you've been to 100 trainings in your life, and they all kind of follow the same format. Clearly, yours is different. How so?
Yeah, so it starts with understanding that I'll slice things up in three kind of categories.
Fair
There's
enough.
people that there's people that that deliver a training or they deliver a workshop or a lecture. And when you're delivering a workshop or lecture or training, you're generally delivering information. You're providing people with information. They'll learn that information. It's up to them to learn it. It's up to them to practice. It's up to them. You're just providing that medium. And these aren't necessarily the correct definitions. These are just the ones that I work off of.
Fair enough.
Then you can present. And when you're presenting information or you're presenting in a training, the purpose isn't just to deliver information, provide information. It's also to shift something in people. You shift their beliefs, you shift their way of thinking of something, you mobilize them to do something. And then there's training, and this is where I put myself, the category that I put myself in. As a trainer, I I hold myself accountable for somebody's development and for their learning and for their own skill development. So in training, I'm not just looking to present people or deliver information. I'm not just looking to move people, shift the way they see something or mobilize them to do something, but I'm looking to actually find the ways I can up level them, hack them into a higher level, into a different league, get them into the next plane of understanding of abilities.
Hmm.
So if you mentioned financial trainings, that's a great example of delivering information. You know,
Yep.
they, I am not mobilized after financial training. Um, a Tony Robbins workshop or something like that, somebody that where the speaker, the presenter is very charismatic, that that mobilizes you and that shifts how you think, or TEDx presentations. But a trainer and my mentors, James Sakalis, if I hadn't mentioned his name, I consider James to be one of the best trainers, if not the best trainer of anything. And he works behind the scenes night and day to make sure that myself and all of my peers and other students are picking up the what he's putting out there. And he's working on so many different levels. It's not just a conscious level where it's the information that you're aware of or the skills that you're aware of building, but he's doing things on an unconscious level, on many different levels. For like sometimes he'll be speaking to one person and it'll look like he's answering a question to somebody over here, but he's actually doing some stuff for this group here and maybe another person as well. So that's what's going on my trainings. I'm constantly aware of what's going on with the group. I'm helping manage the group because it's important that the entire group is in rapport, that they're all resonant with each other because this is not an individual sport. If you're trying to learn telekinesis on your own, you're not going to get very far
Really? Why?
because again, it's not about the skill, it's about the belief that you can do it. And one of the fastest ways to break down those beliefs that you cannot do it and to instill the beliefs that you can is to see other people doing it.
Yep.
And something that I teach on my trainings is modeling. And this is really foundational to the trainings. Modeling is just basically picking up by watching. Um, so scientifically, like mirror neurons, I'm sure you've heard of mirror neurons. So when you see somebody doing a skill, you're watching that, your neurons generally the pathways will be firing to pick that up, and that's kind of the scientific explanation. Um, Modeling, I believe, is actually that, but there's also an energetic component, and it's the state that you go into, a very open and receiving state where you're watching somebody do something and you're just picking it up through whatever you want to call it, osmosis, through energetic field by just placing your attention and awareness on them. But there's some tricks to it. So it's not a place where you can't be evaluating, you can't be straining. There's a few things to enter the modeling state correctly, and we make a lot of use of that in the telekinesis trainings.
So you hold these trainings and um, give us kind of a sense of like where do you start and what kinds of things can people realize they can do?
So usually, if it's a longer training, I'm talking like 5, 6, 7 days.
Yeah.
Um, there's a lot of beliefs and a lot of belief work that I do. And almost all of my trainings, I'll spend about the first hour or two doing stories and metaphors and prepping people up to be able to receive this kind of stuff. Because even if believe that this stuff is real, because they wouldn't be on the training unless they believed it, they might not believe it's for them or that they can do it. So there's a lot of work there. Um, there'll be also some trance work as well. There'll be some hypnosis because getting into an alpha state is really beneficial for any sort of psychic skill. And also getting into a theta state is really beneficial for um, helping helping rework the system, each person's unconscious mind to be able to accept these kinds of things. And we start off really easily with like maybe a psi wheel, or I had one training where I got everybody to do a psi wheel under a glass,
Hmm.
because then you get it right out of the way that hey, this is real, and people do it. But I always have to gauge, are people at that level to, are they primed enough to start off with that? Um, and then we'll do stuff like people will stick things to walls, so they'll stick pennies and coins to walls. They'll stick toothpicks or paper clips, and we'll slowly build up to boxes or other things like, like light stuff, lighter stuff. We'll have people magnetize metals. So we'll start them off with like needles and pins and have give people some cutlery that maybe they bent already. So maybe they would have done some spoon bending or some fork bending ahead of time. And then they'll use those to magnetize some needles. And we've done bizarre stuff like pushing needles through tables.
What?
Yep, yep. We've
I've
done
never heard of such a
aborting.
thing. This is great. Keep going.
Yeah, so actually they do this they've done this a lot in China. So they have these young kids that are pushing objects through other objects, through glass, through cups, through but they're almost moving it through, sometimes not leaving any mark. What we've done on our trainings is people will push needles through a table, but we get them up there by first pushing things through a cardboard cup and then increasing that through a piece of cardboard and then through a table. Um, the craziest thing though is, and this was unbelievable even for me. So back in October, we did a training in Utah in Ogden, and um, just spur of the moment, I was like, okay, I want them to do something absolutely unbelievable. And I was up there and I knew I had to deliver this with full confidence. Because if I wasn't fully confident in this, then I'd be setting up the frames that I don't know if this is going to work. And if they see that I don't know if this is going to work, then they're not going to believe that they can do it. So I said, "All right, guys, um, I got a bunch of pennies and coins, and I put them in one of those stereotypical red cups, and I put them at the front of the room. And I had everybody stand up and one by one go to the front of the room, get a penny from the red cup, put in their pocket, and have everybody memorize that, memorize the feeling of doing that. And after they did that three, four, five times, I said, all right, now what you're going to do is using your spirit body, your energetic body, you're going to develop a very strong charge because this is what they've done in Russia. This is how the Russians do it. And they believe that it has to do with an electrical charge. And then using that electrical charge and that electrified spirit body, you're gonna send that out of your crown, out of the top of your head, and you're gonna go just as you did physically. Your energetic body is gonna go to the front of the room and it's gonna grab a penny and it's gonna come back to and sit down in your seat. Now, I don't know if they do this in Russia. I don't know if it's electrical. I don't know if any of that stuff is true. But I know how the mind works. I know how this kind of stuff works. You need to provide people with a reason for how this stuff can happen. And if you deliver it confidently and clearly and as if it's, yeah, this is how it's done, then people, okay, they'll buy into it. Especially me being in front of the training, being an authority, having already showed them some crazy things are possible. They're gonna, okay, this is real. And we had a class of about 30. And we had three people teleport pennies into their pockets.
Whoa.
I I, I was I was freaking out. I was the only one freaking out. Well, me and my co-trainer as well, Dahlia, we were freaking out. Everybody else thought it was normal because they expected this stuff to happen. Some people were disappointed because only three people did it. So the people that didn't do it were disappointed. The people that got it were like, "Oh, great! This is, I expected this to happen." And yeah, we managed to do teleportation, and um, because that was the first time, the success rate was very low, so about 10% of the class. The second time when we followed that up in Sedona with about 40 people, we had about 12, 13 or 14 people that did it. So it was almost about or just over about third of the class. Um, and the craziest thing about that wasn't the teleporting that happened during the exercise. It was the teleporting that started to happen afterwards and outside of the class. Um,
Ah.
pe- People just started getting random objects appearing out of nowhere. Um, Objects that they knew they left at home because everybody flew into Sedona or drove into Sedona. They would get like little figurines or pens that they knew were at home. Different things were just started to appear, like coins, like very old coins, not U.S. coins. One gentleman got a Mexican coin, um, and one lady got a quarter that was it wasn't a silver quarter, but it was like 100 or 200 years old, and it was valued at like $1,500. So random stuff started to appear, and we've done this now. We've repeated this many times, the teleportation exercise, and each time after we do the teleportation exercise, random things start to appear or disappear as well. We've had disappearances as well.
That's what I'm really good at this. My phone and my keys just disappear. I need to take your class, see if I can reverse that. So you teach people to do this telekinesis, and that has to profoundly change their sense of self and who they are and what they're capable of. Um, Talk a little bit about that and the changes that you have seen in people or would like to see in people that this work can provide them.
Yeah, so that's actually my favorite part, Scott. So the telekinesis stuff is great. It's really interesting, but for me, the important stuff isn't the doing telekinesis. It's what are the implications of this? And this is why I prefer to do a longer form training, a 5 day, 6 day, or 7 day training, rather than because we also do 3 day trainings, but that is more just skill development. Um, the implications are massive. They're huge. The fact that, we can actually influence reality, manipulate reality, change things. This has massive implications. And if you just think of stuff like, for example, math,
Mhm.
right? So, um, right now, because of math, we're able to get rockets up into space. We're going to be landing them on moons if we haven't already landed them on Mars. I mean, if we haven't already landed them on Mars. We're able to do some incredible things because of some very basic building blocks that were established early on. So if you consider like addition, right? Addition allows you then to move on to multiplication, which then allows you to do powers. As you build things up, you get to things like algebra, trigonometry, calculus, things that start to be much more complex, but they're still built on fundamental um, laws almost, or ways that the world works, or we think the world works. So this this belief that we have, that material reality is material,
Yep.
like you can't pass those things through. This is fundamental in us. It's fundamental in how we operate in the world, like what we perceive, how we move, what we think of ourselves, how we relate to other people, how we relate to our career, our family, society at large. It's fundamental. So if you just train these skills, that implication doesn't settle in. But if you take the time to really process what is going on, and this is what I love about the trainings, and when I get a chance, I have time to really work with people, because what ends up happening is we remove this block, this fundamental foundational block of, physical reality, and instead we take in a new block and we insert that, okay, physical reality is not as physical as we think, you know, there's other things going on. And we insert this block and then we work on, well, this this is the foundation for this block and this block. So now let's remove these blocks. Okay. And what does that mean for you and that you can do this? What does that mean for how you interact with reality? For even for like the most basic things, and by basic, they're not actually that basic, but healing
Yes,
ourselves.
I knew you were going to go there because if you can make needles go through cups, you can fix torn ligaments and heal the physical body. It seems like the same skill set.
Exactly. Yeah. And if anything, it's almost, in my mind anyway, and it's easier. And that's a frame that I'm happy to share with people and to have other people adopt. It's easier because
There's
we're
already a
working with,
template.
yes, there's already a template. That's true. I wasn't even thinking of that.
Yeah,
I was
that so
thinking,
we're returning the body to the original template, which has always existed. So we're taking something that's out of whack and saying, go back to what it was supposed to be. You don't even have to
yeah,
create it. You don't even have to know what it is. Just
the
wow,
blueprint's already there.
blueprint's already there,
And it's biological systems. So if you think
which
about
which have their own intelligence too. So you get it's like a
exactly,
cooperative adventure. Ha!
exactly. And
Sorry, I
biological
just
systems are constantly changing, right? They're
right.
dynamic, they're moving. Moving a can, it's not moving. It's stationary. There's nothing to move it unless you bring in a force to move it. But biological systems are inherently changing all the time. So it works very well with probability and statistics and the idea that if something's already moving, it can already you can guide the movement in the direction that you want. So just a little bit of intention can bring it in the direction that you want. It's so much easier. And then you're not working with like one can. You're working with millions and millions of cells, biological systems that have a blueprint. How easy is it then to heal yourself or heal others?
Yep, this is just fascinating. So, what else have you discovered that people have had like, ah, whoa, I didn't know I could do this?
Well, the next big thing that you can use this for is manifesting. Um, Manifesting things into your reality. So, bringing about certain people, bringing about certain opportunities, bringing about certain things in your life. And again, that's a lot easier than moving something because with with reality, like if you're looking to, I don't know, let's just say you're looking for an opportunity. Somebody wants a career and a certain kind of a career.
Okay.
You're obviously you don't need to manifest that like in this moment. You're giving yourself some time to bring that about. And to bring that about, you're not just, again, you're not working with just physical reality, you're working with people. And people move, they're living systems. They have beliefs, they move around, they think in different ways, they have a perception of certain things. So like a dynamic system, like a chaotic system, a non-linear system, one that has many, 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 many variables, like the weather, you know, we can very accurately predict the weather an hour from now. But as we increase time, because we only have so many measurement points and there are so many variables, as we increase time, it becomes exponentially more difficult and becomes more random. So a week, tomorrow, yes, a week starts to get difficult. A month, who even knows? Similarly, with manifesting, if you want to bring something about a month from now or a year from now, you have to make the tiniest little change then to bring about that reality because all you have to do is just move a neuron in one direction or a cluster of neurons in one direction for one person and then another person to to have that chance meeting with someone to then say, hey, you're the perfect person for what I need to be doing right now.
I love it. Okay, so you do the work in telekinesis, and I know you sent me a note that said that you have kind of switched a little bit and are now really interested in telepathy, that ability to transmit ideas from person to person. How did that happen, and where's that going?
Yeah, so telepathy, And the way it happened was my Dali and I, Dali Burgon, who's my co-trainer, and she has her daughter Lidu Burgon, who's an incredible miracle child. She's autistic, nonverbal autistic, and she's highly telepathic. She can see the future, she can see the past. She's working with researchers, she's working with a lot of scientists. Um, they've really proven her abilities, and she's also proven it to me because she's told me stuff that without me even asking, she's answered my questions. I'll I'll ask a question in my mind, she'll pick it up, and then she'll spell it out for me. Um, she asked us, Dali and I, to include telepathic exercises and to teach people telepathy on our trainings, in addition to telekinesis and psychokinesis and extraocular vision. And that's because
Sorry,
her
say that again. Extraocular vision, meaning
extraocular vision or mind sight. So being able to see with your eyes closed or with a blindfold.
got it. Okay.
Um, Her angels, what she calls angels and what she calls her teachers, it's basically other entities that are helping us. We all have them, according to her, and I believe that as well. Um, their mission is to, or they've asked us to include these to bring telepathy out to the world and to normalize it and to help people learn this. And it's something that even I had as a child, I remember because I was reading these books. And when you're young, it's like you have much more access to truth almost, or like when you're quite young and you don't have the constraints of the world yet, of society. And
Hmm.
sometimes it's like you have these nuggets of truth. And I remember when I was very young and I told my mother, I said, telepathy is the thing that will change the world. Because if everybody was telepathic, nobody could be deceitful, nobody could do anything bad, nobody could be mean, nobody could hurt anybody. We wouldn't be putting people into power that were not good. Um, you know, people, people in corporations and businesses, their intentions would be open and would be seen for everyone. So, as much as telekinesis is incredible and it has changed the lives of myself and many people that I've worked with. Telepathy is what I think will actually change the world and will bring human society, us, to the next level of evolution, or not even evolution, the next level of consciousness, because it's about being empathetic, being kind, being caring, and being loving with others. That's that's the mission. That's my mission now.
That's wonderful. That's my mission too. we got, we got to talk about how we're going to elevate the human species into something that's more connected to the non-physical, to the divine. So when the same question as I did with telekinesis, um, how do you teach telepathy, and what are people able to do when you go through these various steps?
Yeah, so there's different levels of telepathy. Most people, when they hear telepathy, they think of mind-to-mind communication as if like, I'm thinking of a number from 1 to 100, what is it? And then you pick it up, 44. Um, that is a fairly high level of telepathy because then you're hearing the my inner thoughts, my inner dialogue. It doesn't start there. It first starts more with emotions or feelings. So you pick up on my worry, my anxiety, my love, my happiness, my excitement.
Hmm.
Um, and then the next level starts to be more on with the senses. And that's what we train with, physical sense. Like what does fire feel like, or what does warmth feel like? Start to feel that. Other senses, audio senses. What does a bird sound like, or what does nature? What does it sound like to be in the forest? And we have to be careful because each person conceptualizes these things differently. So similar with something like remote viewing, where you try not to translate, you try not to have the conscious mind make sense of something. You try to work with just the raw data. You want to be really focusing on what the raw input is. And there's some back and forth and some adjustment at the beginning that is necessary, some calibrating that we do on our exercises, because you want to calibrate to each person. You want to calibrate yourself as well to, okay, notice when is it when is it you that's making something up, and when is it something that you're picking up from out there?
Yep.
And the exercises, they vary. We start people off in with bigger groups because bigger groups work better. You can have like a group intention sending something and a group receiving that, and that works really well. And we talk about more of the technical aspects as we've learned from Lidu as well, about sending something into somebody's toroidal field, and just imagining that. And again, whether or not that is real, um, to me doesn't matter. It's the fact that we are providing ourselves with a belief of how this works. And that is enough to then, okay, this is how I'm going to do it. This is what my expectation is. Both parties agree. Let's do it. Um, Hypnosis as well, bringing people into trance. So in an alpha state, your inner dialogue is much more quiet, if not completely still. So you're able to receive. And again, also able to send as well when you're more of a alpha state. So there's some fractionation as well that happens with that, so that we get people used to going into an alpha state, similar to how they do in the Monroe Institute, where they bring people down to alpha to theta and further. And with repetitions, people are able to get there more quickly and more easily.
Yep. Okay, we are bumping up against our time limit here. Is there anything more that you'd like to say about um, telepathy? And first of all, I have a question. Does telepathy happen in English? Does it happen with language?
Great question. So when it's language, that'll be a more advanced form of telepathy, and that is something that we do with our exercises. We have people later on to practice hearing somebody's inner dialogue. But that's another thing. We shouldn't see telepathy as just restricted to humans. We can be telepathic with animals, with our pets. If people have pets, that's a great way to practice telepathy, or with their kids. You can be telepathic with plants, although it's harder to, you can't really confirm, validate whether you're right or not with that. But you can be telepathic with entities around you, with your guardian angels or your spirits or your teachers, however you frame that. So telepathy is constantly happening. And if we expand the definition of telepathy from mind-to-mind communication, but instead expand it to almost like you're sending and receiving, we're constantly sending and receiving. Even us right now, I'm feeling something, and you're picking up on what I'm feeling on at least an unconscious level. And same vice versa with yourself. We're constantly doing this. And it's the same thing when you go into a place, into an expo, into a conference, or into a training room. There will be a field or an energetic a resonance of those people there, and there's telepathy happening there. So it's it's not just language. Yes, it is language, but it's not just language. It's much more than that.
Okay, two last things. I'm going to ask you um, how people can find out about more about you and your trainings, and then if you have any last words of wisdom or you want to answer a question I forgot to ask you, let's do that. So first off, how can people find out more about you?
I have a personal website that has some general stuff, Stefan.com. But we have our trainings on extra-ordinaries.com. That's where we have our training set up. We have one coming up in Utah. We have a Sedona one specific to telepathy that's happening at the end of July. We have a Bali one, and we'll be posting stuff up there. And if they sign up, you can check stuff out there. I also have an Instagram if people want to see some more. I do a lot of explanations and like how-to videos so people can try to learn this stuff. Um, and that's actually what I want to leave people with is you don't need to do a training. You don't need to do a training. It's much easier to learn with others. So, yes, being in a training environment is great, but if you just have a few friends, if you have some people from your family, your brother, sister, get yourselves in a group and do this stuff together. You don't need, you do not need a training. There's ways to learn this stuff. There's a lot of material out there, and I really encourage everybody to try this stuff. Really try this stuff because it's not just about a cool skill. It's not just about a party trick. This stuff will rewire who you are, who you are at your core. It changes who you are and how you see the world that you live in. And further than that, you're changing the world around you. You're changing your friends, you're changing your family, you're changing your neighborhood, your society, because this is the stuff that's going to elevate humanity. It's going to elevate your consciousness, and in turn, it's going to elevate those around you. And it's our responsibility, especially today, to make this change. It's a tough time. It's hard times that we live in right now, and it's up to us, everybody that is seeing what's going on. It's up to us to make these changes, and the changes start with ourselves.
Alex, this has been a terrific interview. Thank you so much for being with us today on the Afterlife Files.
Thank you very much, Scott. It was a pleasure speaking with you. Thank you very much for your questions. It was very, very interesting for me as well, and I really enjoyed it.
And for those of you that are still watching, stick around. I've got a couple of ideas that I think you're going to want to listen to. So, again, one more time, Alex, pleasure having you with us.
Thank you, Scott.
Just to be clear, telepathy rarely happens in English. Stefan mentioned that communication can be transmitted using any of the five physical senses: visual, auditory, kinesthetic, smell, and taste. In our work with shared and near death experiences, Dr. Charlene Nicely and I have identified an additional five modes of perception that are also present in telepathy. They are synesthesia. That's the idea where there is a mixing of the senses, like hearing colors. Imagination or creativity. That's the idea that the non physical reacts to ideas. Then there's emotion, intuition, and synchronicity in both the physical and non physical worlds. Trusting these 10 modes of perception allows us to appreciate the many ways in which the physical and non physical worlds interact. Thanks for being with us on the Afterlife Files, and we'll see you next time. Bye now.